The key to a UConn win is stopping Andrew Nebhart and limiting Graham Ike. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to all the fans. This podcast has grown exponentially over the last 9 months, and it's because of fans like you who value the great UConn content we try to bring. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering both the UConn men's and women's basketball program, and we sprinkle in a little football. We're the absolute basketball capital of the world, and we couldn't do it without you. To show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project. This is a initiative in a charity that helps send kids in underserved areas to UConn games on both the men's and women's side, and the football games, and I believe baseball in the spring. So we also do a monthly donation to Bleeding Blue for Good, UConn's NIL initiative. Hopefully that makes a little bit of a difference. If you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, we bring into the program Tuck Cleary, founder and editor of House of Kraus, the go-to newsletter for Gonzaga basketball fans, and a college basketball writer for Heat Check College Basketball. Let's bring him on now and unmute his mic. Tuck, first question for you. UConn is going to try to disrupt Andrew Nebhart, and that's basically it. Like that's my game plan for this preview. On the opposite side for Gonzaga, is there one player that Gonzaga will look to minimize or disrupt to win this game?
I mean, it's just the fact of, can you slow down Solo Ball? I think Solo Ball is by far the one weakness Gonzaga is going to have on the defensive end. I'll say Solo and Liam McNeely are the two players that kind of offer some frustrating wrinkles for Gonzaga. If you watch the West Virginia game that Gonzaga played, where they had that second half collapse and the final 5-minute collapse, a big issue for them was figuring out how to handle a larger wing guard forward hybrid in like what Liam offers with what Tucker DeVries was doing. So Liam isn't the shooter that Tucker is, but Liam is able to attack closeouts to the level that Tucker can. I think that Liam offers just an awkward length for Caleb Battle or whoever to guard. So those are the two players for me. I think Liam you have a possibility to slow down. Solo, I think it's just going to be a constant battle all game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think also, the thing with Liam is he's a freshman in name only. I don't think he's to the level of Steph Castle last year, but he certainly is kind of taking over the mantle of that Cam Spencer role of last year, even though he's more 6'8" in a wing. They're using him more in the hunting role to try to get to the hoop, because Solo is more of just a straight sniper. Like he's Andrew Hawkins. He's not Tristan Newton. He's not probing the lane. We really don't have that this year. I think that's where Liam is trying to kind of work to that. So that'll be an interesting matchup in itself. Like, how do they handle Liam's size and also handle Solo's shooting? But on the flip side, there seems to be, almost mirrors in this game, right? Where our point guards are, you obviously have the better point guard in Andrew Nebhart. He's averaging like 11 assists a game or close to it. Seasoned player. Haas is more of a backup guard who's kind of been thrust into the starting lineup. So point guard is still an issue for us. Front court, I think, is going to be a big issue with this game, because Terrace Reed and Samson Johnson, while talented, foul a lot. How do you guys plan to take advantage of that? You think we're going to see a lot of straight post moves, pick and roll? Like, what do you see from that matchup?
I think Gonzaga is going to run the pick and roll until it's clear that it's not working anymore. And like, it could be just adjustments from Hurley. I think the fact that this is like an entire week from the last game is a huge advantage for UConn, just to be able to kind of piece things together and kind of run some different stuff defensively than maybe you guys normally would. And just kind of center the attack on limiting Ryan Nembhard in the pick and roll action, having him do the read and react of needing to find the second option. Because for whatever reason, in the West Virginia game and the Kentucky game, those are 2 second halves where Ryan really struggled with finding, okay, that first option isn't there. What is my read and react? What is my secondary move? Then again, I have to say, like, yeah, the key is stopping Ryan Nembhard, but he's probably having statistically the best point guard season of anybody in the country. 40 assist rate. He was slowed down. I think the Kentucky slowdown is a little exaggerated in the sense of, look, you can't get assists when guys aren't hitting wide open shots. And there were some wide open bunnies. There were some wide open 3-pointers. If Gonzaga is going to be the 3-point shooting team they've been the last 4 games, then yeah, I think they're in a world of trouble against UConn.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I think when most people hear the name Gonzaga, it's a household name. I talked about this yesterday. It's almost kind of funny, like the connective tissue these two programs have together, of that 1999 team initially, where that became Gonzaga was the household name after that, essentially, right? And it went on this crazy run with Mark Few and the streak and all that. But most people think of them as still that, sharp shooting team that always is going to have, plus 3-point shooters. You're only shooting it at like a 33% clip right now. Who do you feel like needs to step up in that regard on your team to kind of take this next step?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, so Ryan's going to have to be more comfortable taking shots. He hasn't been very confident. He's shot at a good percentage, but it's at very low volume. I think he's shooting like around 2 threes per game. The big thing for Gonzaga, and this is exactly what was a major part of their collapse against Kentucky, is they just stopped going through Nolan Hickman in the second half. And a big issue for Gonzaga throughout this season has been the integration of Nolan Hickman's shooting in second halves of games. He has around a 13% usage in second halves right now, which is around the 6th most attempts for the team, when he is by far the only consistent 3-point shooter so far this season. Having a player that is your go-to scorer and go-to shooter from the guard position just go completely silent in the second half of games is just not going to be sustainable if you're going to have to come back from behind, if you're going to have to keep teams that are hitting shots at arm's length.
Fair enough. All right, when we return, we're going to dive deeper into the preview. I want to hear talks, maybe a couple of dark horse contributors in this game this weekend, and we're going to talk about that coming up after the break. There's nothing like being courtside for a basketball game. The energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers squeaking on the court, and the thrill of seeing your favorite players up close. It's an experience you just can't replicate. I don't think anyone will forget seeing Kemba Walker's step back 3-point or step back shot against Pittsburgh in the Big East tournament. What an absolute great experience to be there. All that in that season was phenomenal. And this season, I know the Husky fans can't wait to watch Alex Caravan solo ball splash the nets. But here's the thing. Finding great tickets doesn't have to be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time doesn't just offer tickets for sports. They've got you covered on concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with new Game Time pick features, it's easier than ever to find incredible deals on seats without sifting through endless options. I've done this for fans of mine, for friends, family, get them these super deals. And it's not only where prices are unbeatable, but the app is made so simple that you can see panoramic views from your seat. Plus, there's all-in pricing, and there are no surprise fees at checkout. It's so convenient. You have the lowest price guarantee, and that means if you find a better price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So why wait? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, y'all? It's game time. Oh, my friends at Home Field. Oh, UConn fans, are you ready to take your Husky pride to the next level? Look no further than Home Field apparel. Our gear is not just any college merch. It's vintage premium comfort combined with vintage-inspired designs that tell the story of the UConn Huskies of any era. Whether you're repping the blue and white of the game or lounging at home, Home field has you covered. And here's the full court press on this. Use promo code UConn24 at checkout for 15% off your first order. So Husky fans, I love home field. I got a bunch of stuff. I'm not wearing it right now. I'm repping my own logo today, but you got to check out home field apparel. Use the promo code UConn24 at checkout for 15% off your first order. And we're back with Chuck Clary of House of Kraus, the go-to spot Substack for Gonzaga basketball. Tell me about it a little bit, man. Like, you've started this essentially this year. I'm really happy for you. I think I was reading a few things this morning. I think you do a really great job. Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, appreciate it. So House of Kraus at Substack.com is a newsletter for Gonzaga basketball. I just kind of wanted to fill a void with Gonzaga basketball and do a little more deep dive stuff, thorough game preview conversations, take a deeper dive just in general, just because the space kind of like demanded it. So like I've had a great time with that and had a good reaction from the fans. So trying to give them the kind of stuff that I've been itching for coverage for Gonzaga basketball. And then, Heat Check. I'm in the Philly area, so I've been helping cover the Big Five over here, and then hopefully keep on building that. And as I've been living on the East Coast, I'm from the West Coast, just kind of learning more about the rich history of basketball over here.
For sure, man. We appreciate you coming on and giving us a little coverage on Gonzaga that we normally would not get. And so I have to ask this question because you're the guy to talk to about this. Which players out of the usual, the people that are in the minds of fans going to this game, Nembhard, Ike, other Nolan Hickman, who could play a bigger role or a pivotal role for Gonzaga if you had to pick one or two guys that maybe are step up today and that kind of puts them over the top?
So for Gonzaga to really have a chance in this UConn game, just because of the consistent athleticism throughout the roster that UConn has, I think you have to start going through the transfers that you got this summer. And this is the main issue on the House of Crafts podcast. My co-host and I talked about this. There's just a consistent issue of being so Ryan Nembhard dependent because he's been so clearly a great point guard, a great field general, dimer, pass first, traditional point guard, that there isn't a lot of offense initiation outside of him. So for this team to turn a corner, for this team to become a Final Four national championship contending team, which I haven't seen basically since the Baylor game, they need to have Caleb Battle create offense for himself and for others. And you talked about Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed's foul issues. The number one thing that Caleb Battle is exceptional at is attacking the basket and getting to the free throw line. If they allow Caleb to actually initiate more offense, he hasn't been utilized nearly to the degree that you would think in the half court. He's throughout his career been a half court player, but around a third of his points are coming in transition. So it's not like he's being utilized a lot in the half court. And getting him downhill, getting him to the basket, especially if you start getting in the bonus, he's a 90+% 3-point shooter. At one point this summer in gym, he made, I think it was like 400 straight free throws in a practice, like didn't leave the free throw line. So if Gonzaga is going to have a prayer, they're going to have to get their transfers. And Michael Ajayi, who has had a very below expectation season so far this season, he hasn't looked confident. Getting him confident and comfortable, he's basically the athlete that I trust the most to try and stick around with Caravan. And if Caravan kills you, then it's good luck. So,
yeah, the first time. It's so crazy. Like, we're about 15 minutes into the show, and this is the first mention of Alex Caravan. It just goes to show, how under the radar he truly is as a guy who might actually be a first team All-American player this year. And he showed some great resilience coming back against Texas. I mean, he had his first double-double in his career against Texas, which is crazy. What do you see them trying to do to minimize all that he does, from screening, from the slips that he does, to obviously his shooting is at least 46% from three right now. How do you slow him down? Is it running him off the 3-point line? What are your inclinations on that?
I think it'll be running him off the 3-point line or attempting to. I do think that Michael Ajayi and Ben Gregg have shown a good job of doing that with stretch fours to a certain degree. Now, granted, Alex Caravan is one of the better stretch fours in the country, so that's easier said than done. I think the fact that they do have two competent defenders in Ben Gregg and Michael Ajayi, being able to switch between those two players and feel comfortable with them on defense. It's just a matter of, if Michael Ajayi is not hitting shots, Michael Ajayi is not going to stay in the game. So it's going to become the Ben Gregg attempt of limiting Alex Caravan. And as Ben's a great defender, but he also is limited mobility wise around the perimeter, and he does defend with his hands when he's running guys off the 3-point line at times. So I think that it's going to be an uphill battle. I don't think it's impossible. But yeah, it's going to have to be a utility approach from both of those guys.
Fair enough. Let's talk about something we touched on yesterday's program with your counterpart, Connor Hope, and Aidan Mahaney's familiarity with Gonzaga, albeit in an entirely different role here with UConn. Honestly, a minimal role at this point, which is somewhat surprising from our perspective. We did talk about why we thought that was, but I want to get your perspective on that. You've seen a lot of Aidan Mahaney. What do you attribute some of his struggles at UConn to? And be honest about it. No pulling punches.
To be honest with you, I was surprised that Dan Hurley recruited him.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's what I was looking for.
Legitimately, I think Dan Hurley is easily one of the best college basketball minds in the sport right now. He's the best coach in college basketball right now. His staff, the ability that you guys have had to keep your staff on board and not leave is been remarkable. So with those minds, it was very surprising to me that the player they went after was Aidan Mahaney, just because I was shocked last season coming into, I believe, his sophomore year. They were calling him the next Jimmer Fredette. And it's like, I've never seen him be that level of sharpshooter. He's a volume shooter. He's a guy that needs the ball in his hands. He's a guy that needs, when the ball's not in his hands, some extra help getting separation to shoot the ball. He's been covered defensively by the fact that he had Augustus Marshallonis, who's a great perimeter defender. Mm-hmm. He had great wing defenders backing him up. And then he had a rim protector, Mitchell Saxon, who's underrated. He didn't athletically jump off in games against mid-level WCC teams, which are nothing close to the teams we'll be seeing in the Big East. And I don't know. I'm like, is this a tinge of me being a Gonzaga alum talking about a former St. Mary's player? Sure. But legitimately, I think it's good that he's playing Gonzaga because I think he'll be confident enough to actually shoot the ball. I've been shocked by how little he's taking attempts with you guys when he's on the court. Right. And like, maybe it'll help playing Gonzaga because he'll be less gun shy potentially. But if he's going to be a guy that's only confident enough to take 3 shots in 12 minutes, then I just don't know why he's on the court for you guys.
No, and listen, these are all. I like Aidan as a kid. Like, I think he's a hard worker. He does what he's supposed to do. I know that they've asked a lot of him, and to your point, like earlier this year, I said the only way this works is if this recruiting pitch that he got, which I was spot on, even though I wasn't in the room. This is essentially all that was said. We know that you have talent. We know that you haven't reached your full potential. You can't, to your point, you can't be, scoring 4 points against Portland or 6 points against Pepperdine. Like, they felt like they could ooze more out of him. And I think that's why they did it versus this guy was like ready-made, like Cam Spencer, right? Because if you told me at the beginning of last year, coming off a national championship, that Cam Spencer was going to be where he is today, dropping 50 points in the G League and dropping 14 points in the NBA, I would have told you were crazy, because he was good at Rutgers and he was a good shooter, but no one knew that he was going to be what he was last year. And I think they were trying to recreate that of like, hey, this kid has untapped potential. But the difference between Cam and Aidan is mentality and size. Cam's 6'5", sturdy 6'6". Aidan's 6'2.5", 6'3". So I'm with you. Like, I think the Gonzaga game will kind of bring something out of him. But I'm just curious from your perspective because you've seen him more than we have.
Yeah, and When he's on, he's on. That's it.
Yeah.
I have no issue in admitting that. I just mean I have so much respect for your talent evaluators that when I
You
heard,
think this is a miss? You think this is a miss?
I think it's a miss. I think he's not big enough to defend like you guys need him to defend. I don't think he is as free of a passer for. That's the beautiful thing about those national championship teams is how much the ball moved, how much each guy was willing to move the ball and get the best look for each other. And at St. Mary's, he was a shot hunter. There's a little bit of he's really good when things are going right, but when there's a hiccup, what's gonna happen? And
right,
I again, like when I heard Liam McNeely switch his decision over to UConn, I was like, damn, they got another one. When Tristan Newton, Stephon Castle, all those guys committed to UConn, I was like, oh, they're gonna be terrifying. They're gonna be good. They're gonna be really, really good. When I heard that the comp to Aidan Mahaney was Cam Spencer, as much as I believe in analytics, I also believe in the dog mentality, and I did not see a lot of dog in Aidan. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think to put a bow on it and then we'll move on is I think they were expecting kind of like a hybrid, not Cam, because Cam is one of one. He's insane. He might as well be Dan Hurley's son. He's a psycho, but I think they thought they were getting the in between, someone like Tristan who's kind of like chill. With a little of the hey, let's coax this guy out of the West Coast shell, if you will. No disrespect to the West Coast.
Hey! I, as a Tristan Newton respecter, I would love a Tristan Newton hybrid, but man, Tristan Newton is on another level.
He's insane. I know, and I'm with you. I'm echoing what we know, and obviously it's a miss right now. But hey, if he can contribute 6 to 10 points off the bench like he did against Baylor, I think they're going to be fine, and I think they'll be fine with what they get from him.
It would be perfectly Aidan Mahaney for him to score 12 points on Saturday.
And I'm going to tease something, and I'll tag you in it, because I made a video, one of those big head videos of like of a famous movie scene. That's very kind of apropos, I think, for the situation that may happen this weekend. So I'll make sure you see it. I'll send you a preview beforehand. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about something, and it is not really controversial, but obviously UConn lost 3 straight. Gonzaga's got two losses on the season. They're not equal, but I want to ask Tuck here what to make of Gonzaga's 2 losses and where we think this game is going to go from a preview and a prediction perspective coming up after the break. All right, friends, you guys know what FanDuel is all about. It's the number one sportsbook for NFL action. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never miss a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back on Locked On UConn, final segment of the program with Tuck Clary of House of Kraus, and he has a Gonzaga Substack podcast. He also is a college basketball writer for Heat Check CBB. All right, man, I think we've done a really thorough job of talking about all of the aspects of this game, and I'll get your prediction at the end. But there is less a media narrative around Gonzaga's 2 losses than UConn's 3 losses for some obvious reasons, right? One was more shocking in the respect that UConn was very, Dan Hurley in particular was very defiant about how they should have been preseason number 1. I echoed those concerns on the podcast myself, saying that he's probably right until they actually played the games. And I'm curious from your perspective, because you've said a few things on this show that I wrote some notes on that, I don't feel like you feel comfortable playing UConn yet. And they feel like you feel as if you're the underdog in this game, yet you're ranked 8th in the country. And you guys are number 1 in Evan Maya's advanced metrics, number 4 in KenPom. What gives there?
I've just been hurt. Mark. You give up largest margin that Kentucky's ever overcome in a basketball game to win. And then your next game is UConn in Stores South. I don't love that. Not a big fan of that. But I don't know. I Gonzaga fans have been dealing with the fact that you can be analytic darlings, but at the same time, like there just has to be a turning point in games where you close it out. And for the great teams Gonzaga's had, they were able to close out games, create separation, but we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it this season. We saw it in the Baylor game. Gonzaga, that was the only game Gonzaga's played probably an A grade in both halves. This is a team where there is such a concerted focus on scoring in the interior that we haven't seen enough from the guards and the wings scoring wise to feel confident that that's just going to pick up when things get difficult. We didn't see it in the Kentucky game. West Virginia game, it struggled. But ultimately, it's just the fact that no lead feels safe now at this point.
Okay.
And it's I just you have respect for Connecticut. You have respect for the fact that there's going to be a bunch of UConn fans at the game, and
Sure.
it's just a matter of okay. There are two times where in close games, the final 5 minutes it completely fell apart. Why did it fall apart? It's just seeing things finally click, and the things haven't fully clicked together yet, which is a little bit of like an impatience from Gonzaga fans because we just assumed that everything was going to be high continuity because of the amount of players that were returning. But it's clear that they're still having a little bit of headaches getting 2 new players that were the primary options on their former teams integrated into this continuity offense.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to ask you a question that I didn't ask Connor. Do you think Mark Few ever wins a national championship?
I think so, as long as he's as consistent in terms of recruiting and the transfer portal. I think that it's amount of bites of the apple. I feel like at this point, it's not like a personnel issue. It's not like a coaching style issue. It's just simply getting enough opportunities.
Okay. Honestly, I'm surprised at that. I think I don't know if there's going to be because I don't. Is he going to coach long enough where there are opportunities?
I have issues thinking he's going to retire within the next 5 years.
All right, fair enough.
Just from the fact that he's going to a new conference in 2 seasons, and I doubt that he gets Gonzaga to a new conference and then retires. So,
okay, sounds good. I will take your word on that. What do you think about? And this is the last question of this program, and then we'll get your prediction. How do you feel about Dan Hurley's perception? Because, and I'll preface it with this because it's a loaded question. I do feel like from our perspective, from the UConn side, there's some of us, some in the fan base who really don't like the antics. There's some that don't care. I'm one that doesn't care because I'm not a moralist. I could care less how much he swears, how much he yells at our officials. But there's also an in-between where I'm kind of starting to be, which is he's learned from the situation in Maui. He's talked about how he's trying to coach a little more with grace and understanding of this team that's not on the same level as last year's team. Do you think he gets unfairly judged because of how in your face and authentic he is? Or do you think he is judged fairly by national media?
I think it depends. So I think there's 2 answers to this. I think him kind of like demanding the mantelpiece at the start of the season, I wasn't in agreement with that just because I'm like, I respect Tristan Newton, Stephon Castle,
Sure.
Cam Spencer, and especially Donovan Clingan too much to think that there will not be a step back.
Did you, real quick though, to ask you a follow-up question on that? Did you hear his explanation at the Big East Media Day, or did you not?
I did, okay. And I get it. I don't have a big issue with it. I want that to be clear. I just
sure.
I don't know. I just don't think that like he should have had that big of an issue with it because it's just like just win, just prove it again, and then.
But he's doing that. He's doing that to rile you guys up, though. That's the biggest part.
Sure. But I will say I find it hilarious the level that the media and outside fans switch up on Dan Hurley when what he does when they're losing. Because if you were cool with it and you thought it was inspiring and you thought it was refreshing that he was doing it when they were winning, why all of a sudden are you calling him Bobby Knight now?
Yep.
Like that's where I had an issue. Is I can't remember who it was. I think it was somebody from Fox Sports. Kind of hearkened. No, it was Dan Woken. He compared what Danny Hurley was doing to what Bob Knight was doing, and I was like, I don't think his players feel like he's doing what Bobby Knight was doing. It's just like a level of it's easy to punch down to it when it's not working, but when it's working, it's suddenly a revolutionary, great way to get young men to play to their potential.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing right now. Our everydayers that watch this program are definitely a fan of yours right now because to be honest with you, man, like not only are you giving great content to us about Gonzaga, but I feel like that's probably. I mean, listen, opinions are opinions, but that's probably the only way that a rational person should look at this. You don't have to like his antics, but if you love them when they're winning, you can't kill them when they're losing. And that was my entire point throughout that whole stupid comments like 2 weeks ago.
And if you are a hater of Danny Hurley, if you don't like UConn, him doing that while trying to figure out what the hell is going on in Maui from an outsider perspective, kind of funny.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I don't know. I don't see the harm in it, and I don't know why all of a sudden it's pearl clutching season.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a gal that's on UConn Twitter, and we call her I think it's self-proclaimed, but she definitely is. She's the Twitter press secretary, and she comes out with missives every quarter, if you will, right? Very, very, very great follow. Marie LeBrun, and she said, why Dan Hurley should smile more was one of her tweets, which I thought was fantastic because it's so apropos for what this idiocracy is of just, he should grow up and all the different, God, it was like 20 think pieces. It wasn't just Wolken. There was a guy on CBS. You had all the guys on Field of 68 having roundtable discussions about this. It was just asinine.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there's this level of up in arms about Dan Hurley, but it's really cool that Doug Gottlieb is hosting a radio show and his team's getting worked every single game this season.
Yeah, I loved his press conference too, by the way, talking about how he sat the leading scorer because he's trying to build a house the right way. I thought that was brilliant. But anyway, that's a topic for another day, maybe on Locked On College Basketball. Doug, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask you real quick as before you go, who wins the game? What's your score?
Look, I heard Connor bend the knee. I'm not going to bend the knee. I think Gonzaga. I won't say going away with it, but I think if this is a game that is officiated how UConn's been officiated throughout the season, Gonzaga is a top 3 free throw shooting team in the country. If Caleb Battle goes downhill, if Graham EK goes to the line as much as they're projected to, I think this becomes just a matter of Gonzaga withstanding huge runs by UConn, and then it turns into like around a 6 to 8 point game at the end of the game.
No, that's totally fair. I see it differently in the respect that I feel like UConn's playing as close as they've ever been to last year's team from an offensive perspective. Defense is still coming along. They did hold a Texas team who's not as good offensively as Gonzaga, who's 81 or 82 points per game to just 65 points at home. Anytime you win on the road by double digits, that's a good win. I don't care who you're playing. And then what I will say is, before we go, is I think UConn wins this game kind of similar to like a hybrid of Baylor, Texas. I think they'll have a lead, but they're going to give up points because UConn doesn't have the Evan Mia kill shot in them right now. They don't have multiple guys who are going to, hit 3 or 4 threes, get stops, and kind of push the lead out. They give things back. Like in Baylor, they probably should have won that game by 10, but every time they had a run, they turned the ball over. Every time they had a run to get it to 5, they gave it back. So I think Gonzaga is going to kind of punch back to a certain extent. And I said 10. I think it could get to 10, but I'm truly in my heart of hearts as this week goes on. I think this is like a 4 to 6 point UConn win, if that. But it's going to be close, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. If Gonzaga is going to shoot 3 for 20 from 3, they're not going to win this game. And
Neither will UConn.
Yeah.
Conversely.
So if the 3-point shooting is what it's been the last 4 games, there's reason for concern. But if Gonzaga can shoot their average, I don't know. Should be interesting.
All right. Well, I wish you all the best of luck, but not really. But I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you coming on the show. And guys, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For Tuck Larry, I'm Mark Zanetto. Wishing you all a great weekend, but also stay locked on, stay connected. Make sure those toughness meters are rising. And as always, go Huskies.